So we were doing 5 forces, and we said in F1 or the P1 or P3 or SBL, right? We were mainly focused on the attractiveness of the industry. So we were saying, we used to say that, well, this industry is attractive for investment and this industry is not, let's say, on the basis of these 5 forces. In advanced performance management, we will learn how significant are these factors which will actually make an industry or your existing business more, um, I mean, more attractive or not. I mean, let's say, for example, your existing business, right? Let's say if a particular force is not that strong, right? Maybe you will not spend a lot of time on that, and maybe you'll spend time on something else. So you need to measure these forces, right? So our main focus will be now on measures, right? Now, what are these measures? For example, the threat of new entrant. What do you think? How can we actually reduce the threat of new entrant, and how can we actually measure it, right? I'll give you one example. Number of patented products, right? These measures, you see, these are the measures. The measures are going to be either normally in numbers or percentage or amount. Most probably it will be either number or a percentage, right? So the number of patented products or the number of licensed products, right? That could be a measure. Can you give me any other measure? Anyone? So the threat of the new entrant can be seen from the number of patented products, or for example, the amount that you spend on research and development. If you spend a lot of money on research and development, of course, that will actually reduce the threat of new entrants. Nobody would like to start competition with you, right? So amount spent on research and development. Well, of course, if you spend a lot of money, the threat of the new entrant will be low, right? Similarly, the next force was threat of substitute product. For example, if you are traveling by train, the substitute will be bus travel. If you are eating butter, the substitute will be margarine, right? So there are products actually, like if you start selling it expensively, let's say, for example, or if your product is not attractive, then maybe, right? Then maybe your competitor will actually buy a substitute product, right? So how can we measure the threat of the substitute product? Anyone? Yes, the measures were good, right? The one especially that you mentioned was the number of substitute product, right? So of course, if the number of substitute products are very high, number of substitute product, right? If you'll have a lot of number of substitute products available in the market, that would mean that the threat is actually high. If you don't, if the customer, if you change something, of course, the customer is going to switch to another product, a different kind of product, right? Like Windows and the Apple operating system, right? I think they call it Apple Macintosh or something, right? So the Apple operating system, right? So basically it can change. The customer has the choice, right? So the number of substitute products available could be a good measure, right? The next measure could be price elasticity of demand. Right now, you have seen it before, but I know that maybe you will not exactly remember what was PED, or the price elasticity of demand. But you mean an elastic product would be a product when you change the price little bit, the demand will be changed a lot. And if you change the price and demand is not changing significantly, it means it is inelastic. Like for example, you see, if I'm selling a life-saving drug for $1, people are going to buy it. If I sell it for $10, people are still going to buy it. If I sell it for $500, people are still going to buy it, right? That means it is very inelastic, right? Very inelastic, right? So that would mean that for that life-saving drug, if there is no alternative product available, then people or your customers are willing to pay any price for it. I'll give you an example. There is a life-saving drug which is for use for the cancer patients, right? Now that drug was actually available for 5 million rupees, right? 5 million rupees is still, I mean, it's a very big amount, of course, right? For 1 year, right? And then after some time, when another company actually introduced a similar product, then the price actually reduced to about half a million, which is a very big decrease, right? So the price elasticity of demand is actually a very good measure, right? You can also say price per unit. Sometimes the threat of the substitute will be very low because your price per unit is very low. So the customer cannot leave you, right? Another measure could be customers switching cost, right? The customer switching cost, right? Like for example, let's say for example, you have a printer, right? And with the printer, of course, you are selling cartridges also. Now, let's say if your customer do not like your printer, the customer still not leave you. Why? Because he has to buy cartridges, and if he is not going to buy the same cartridges, then he has to buy another printer and he has to spend a lot of money. So the customer switching cost will be very high, and that's why the customer won't leave you for substitute product. Similarly, for example, you can have long-term contract with your customer, and let's say if the customer leaves you, the customer has to pay some penalty, right? So the customer won't leave you, right? I'll give you an example. When I was working for British Gas, right, there were other companies also like Scottish Power or EDF or Southern Electric, right? Now, what British Gas used to do, they used to actually do long-term contract with their customer. Like if you buy your electricity and gas from us for 5 years, we're going to fix your price. So that used to make the customers very happy. But then if the customer will leave you, then of course the customer has to pay $500 or £500 as a fine, as a penalty. So the customer won't leave you for a substitute product, right? The next one is bargaining power of supplier. Now, bargaining power of supplier would mean that your supplier has a lot of bargaining power. So, of course, it's not a good thing for a business. We want our suppliers to be dependent on us. If we are not if we are dependent on our supplier, then we are not going to get very good deals, right? But in order to measure it, in order to measure the bargaining power of the supplier, to see if the bargaining power of the supplier is high or low, what can be the measures? Anyone? I'll start with the first one that we have also already discussed, which is the switching cost. The switching cost of the supplier. So if the supplier is going to leave you, then maybe the supplier is in long-term contract and supplier cannot actually leave you. So first one will be switching cost of supplier, right? We can also see that how many buyers are in the market. So the number of buyers in the market, right? So of course that would mean that if we have, if the supplier will have a lot of customers, that would mean that they actually don't need us, right? So their bargaining power will be very high. right? Now, we can also see it by the percentage discount offered by supplier. You see, if your supplier is actually very much dependent on you, that would mean that your supplier will actually give you a lot of discount. So if your supplier is giving you more and more discount, it means that supplier is actually dependent on you, right? The supplier is actually dependent on you. Like let's say, for example, you are still in conversation with the supplier and immediately you realize that your supplier has given you some discount quickly. That would mean that your supplier is actually very much dependent on you, right? So the bargaining power of the supplier will be low. The number of the buyers in the market, we sometimes cannot measure it, that how many players are in the market, right? We sometimes may not have this information, right? Then the next one is bargaining power of customers.
Sir, with bargaining power of suppliers, can we also say like the number of suppliers available in the market? Because it will also affect on the bargaining power of suppliers.
Okay, the number of suppliers available in the market, right? Yes, you can say because, but that will be more relevant to the bargaining power of,
Yeah.
no, yes, that would be actually relevant to the number of suppliers will be relevant to bargaining power of the supplier. So yes, you can say that the number of suppliers available in the market, right? And for the bargaining power of the customers, again, I'll go with the switching cost of the customers once again, right? I'll start with switching cost of customer, right? We can also talk about the discount, that how much discount are we giving to our customers, right? Or we can talk about the number of warranty claims, right? If they are, if the customer is claiming warranties again and again, then that would mean that we are actually very much dependent on our customers, right? We have actually less choices. I'll give you an example. We actually bought a software, right, a few weeks ago, right? Now that software has actually a lot of issues, but we cannot still return the software because we actually need it a lot, right? We actually need it a lot, right? Uh, so let's write it down. So the next one will be the number of warranty claims. If customers are having a lot of warranty claims, it means that they actually have a lot of bargaining power, right? Yes, the discount one. So how much discount we are offering to our customers. So percentage discount offered to customers, right? And you can also say the number of sellers in the market, right? The number of sellers in the market. So the number of suppliers that you were actually talking about, the number of sellers in the market, like how many people are actually selling in the market, right? So if you will increase the price, of course, your customer will buy from your competitors, or you can say the number of competitors in the market, right? So these are the measures. And the last one is rivalry, right? And again, you can say the number of competitors. You can also say the percentage market share, that how much market share do you have? It means if you have a bigger market share, then it means rivalry is low, right? The amount of advertisement, amount spent on advertisement. Like if you're spending a lot of money on advertisement, that means that there is a lot of competition, right? So the Porter's five forces, something that we have seen before, but P5 actually makes it very interesting because it's more practical and more focused. We're not just shooting in the air. So let's say, for example, if your client is actually asking for help, you are going to tell your client that, well, you need to see how significant are these forces in the market, right? And according to that, you can actually make your strategy, right? Like what should be your discount strategy, or what should be your, for example, the switching cost for the customer strategy, right? And different other things. What should be your advertisement? How much should you spend on advertisement and research and development, right? So different things need to be measured. The threat of new entrant, how significant is this threat? The threat of substitute product, how significant is this threat? And the bargaining power of customer, supplier, and the rivalry, right? So in P5, you'll actually start with the measures, right? You'll actually start with the measures, right?